Hi, I'm Will Kerrigan, and I'm a number one technician in motorsports and a current student, hoping to be a motorsport engineer one day and hopefully make it to F1. I never really liked school. I sort of struggled with it, but I was mad into Formula One and racing. And my mum said to me, you could do that. You could do that one day. An opportunity came up in my second year to run the university race team with a Radical SR1. An opportunity I could never turn down.
God, it's not a poor man's game, this motorsport, eh?
Definitely not. Definitely not. Tires, fuel, the travelling, all the testing you do. You've got to pay all your staff and stuff like that. I wouldn't say it would be less than 100 grand quite easily to do Ginetta Juniors.
Are there other drivers that you've seen around, worked with in the series that perhaps stand out to you, and you'd put your finger in the air and say, "I predict this guy's going to go somewhere." Any names you want to give us? Sleep well,
Thank
Georgie.
you.
Good night. Bye.
No.
We'll keep that in the episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of Georgie's Stripping the Dipping podcast. I'm your host, F1 Blag. And if you ever thought about getting into the motorsport world through the academic route, thinking about being an engineer, then we've got the guest for you. So without further ado, Will Kerrigan, welcome to the show.
No, thank you for having me.
Brilliant. And how are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, I'm very well. Very well. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Busy day, but I'm sure it's the same for you in the motorsport world. So the first question we ask our guests is, if you were introducing yourself to our listeners, how would you do it? So, hi, I'm Will Kerrigan and ...
Hi, I'm Will Kerrigan, and I'm a number one technician in motorsports and a current student, hoping to be a motorsport engineer one day and hopefully make it to F1.
That's quite a good pitch, Congrats on that ambition. So let's just start at the beginning. What would you say your first memory is of motorsport? When's the first time you can really remember thinking about motorsport?
So I'd always been into cars from a young age. Stripping engines with my dad. My dad was always massive into cars as well. So I think the progression to that was always going to happen. And then I think the first time I must have been introduced to motorsport must have been F1 2009 on the Wii. I must have been 8 or something years old, and then I sort of fell in love with F1, and I started watching the races and stuff like that, and became massive into it. And I never really liked school. I sort of struggled with it, but I was mad into Formula One and racing. And my mum said to me, you could do that. You could do that one day. And I was like, yeah, maybe I could. And then she found the course for me. And I set that as a target. I worked my way through. Settled in at first year, was sort of messing around with cars and learning the engineering side, and then an opportunity came up in my second year to run the university race team with a Radical SR1, and that was sort of an opportunity I could never turn down. And it introduced me to the whole side of running the car at the track, but also being in charge of the mechanics, making sure they're doing everything right, the car's properly prepped. We're ready to go to the race week, and that's a massive thing. And then the end of that season came, and I was like, oh, this university will end eventually. I've got to get myself into motorsports, straight away. And I took a list of the team names in Ginetta, and I emailed every one of them. And my current team, Jim at E3 Sport, he emailed me back within half an hour and said, "Oh, we need a hand setting up. Would you just come down and set up for us? Like, just put up an awning." And then I stayed there for the weekend. He let me stay, and then ever since then, I've been working on race cars and living the dream, really.
I love that, and you can hear that it's your dream. And it's interesting, you said to me, or you said to our listeners, that perhaps you didn't massively enjoy school. But, when I look at your CV, is it right that you're currently studying a master's or you're coming to the end of it? Is that right?
So I've just handed in my dissertation a few weeks ago. So I'm still waiting for results, but hopefully a first in that, which given how I was, in secondary school, I didn't think was possible at all. I think a lot of the teachers would have said that as well.
That's hilarious. I mean, but it shows you that if you find the right thing that you want to do and you're motivated, then you can get there. You said your mum found the course for you. So was it going through like the UCAS lists or something? Was that the undergraduate?
She literally just Googled Motorsport Engineering, and the University of Derby came up straight away. And I've sort of, I know there's that course, and then I had a look around. There's quite a few multiple different courses, and then sort of meant I had to do A levels for it. I think just about scraped enough good results at GCSEs to do A levels, and then COVID hit during A levels, so I didn't actually do the exams. But Derby offered me an unconditional place based on my predicted grades, and then yeah, that was my foot in the door.
Wow. So you were one of the generation of students that was affected by COVID.
Yeah, it did
Do you
get
think
me.
that
Yeah.
was like a secret blessing, or did it like also affect like your life, your social life, and everything like that?
Um, not particularly. I did work during COVID. I was just a labourer on a site, but not really. I think I would have done better in some of my grades, but then it saved me in some others. So I think I was lucky. Yeah, just happened. That's about it.
No, fair enough. And so if I ask you the question, if you hadn't got into motorsport, do you have a sense of what you'd be doing now?
I think if I'd still done the A levels, I think I would have gone into civil engineering or something like that. My dad's a civil engineer, so I think yeah, that's where I would have ended up.
Interesting. So you've got an engineering brain, or some, maybe it's not genetic, but there's certainly something in your upbringing that was very much about making things work.
No, definitely. I think my dad's, even stuff like little things like building Lego when you're younger. I think that's a massive. I think a lot of engineers will say they build Lego still. It sort of brings your mind to, putting the pieces together and then you see the final product. There's something about that as, an engineer that's quite nice.
You said that you were running or were you the team manager for your university radical team? Is that right?
Yeah, so um, they said that year that they had this radical and it had sat in the workshop, and I think students did a bit of work on it and stuff like that, but it was mainly just setting up a patch and then putting the car on it and sort of putting some camber on it and stuff like that, and then just setting it down. But they said, this season we want to do something to promote the university. So they said let's take it racing, and we've got an incredible driver in Tom Wood who was is a just driven an Aston Martin GT3 in British GT at the weekend, and we got him in. And yeah, it was like, well, there's these opportunities. You could be a number two, a number one, a data engineer or a race engineer or a team manager. And I thought, team manager opportunity, you're never going to get something like that, maybe ever. So I said, yeah, let's give it a go and see how we do. With no, I'd never been to a track before, so I think the first test day was a bit of a shock when there was all sorts going on in the car, and I was just trying to organise people. And then, yeah, the first race and stuff like that, and then the whole season went really well. Everyone in the team learnt a lot, and we did quite well in the championship. I think we finished second. And yeah, that's just how I got in.
Because obviously you're looking at this in the first instance from an engineering perspective, but did that involve a lot of sort of people management and kind of telling people what to do or how to do things better?
Yeah, there was definitely some of that. You had to tell the team when to be in. When are we going to work on the car before the race weekend? What prep needs doing, and then communicating with the engineers what they're doing and making sure they're up to date and stuff like that. Team debriefings as well after a weekend. What went well, what went wrong, what changes did we make to the car? Did they work? Was there any problems with the car that we need to now look at? To get it ready for the next race. And yes, there's definitely people management in it.
Does that come naturally to you, or was it, what do you find, the car or the people, the easier, the more fun?
I definitely enjoy the car, and the people management I did quite enjoy as well. It's definitely difficult at times, and it was a bit of a steep learning curve at the start. But once you got in, over a season, you bond with the team as well, and you can trust in people doing their jobs correctly. You know what's going on, and whatever happens, you've got faith in the people that a car will make it to the session or make it out to the race.
We're going to talk about E3 Sports in a bit, and I'm also really interested to hear what is actually in a motorsport engineering course, including what you did your thesis on. But before we do that, like team manager of your university team, were you at the time aware of kind of the famous team managers in Formula One? Were you more like a sporting director? Were you like a team principal? Like how do you compare the role in any way?
I think the team principal, I definitely knew of Gunter Steiner. I absolutely loved him, and I still do. I think he's amazing. And the Christian Horners and the Toto Wolves. I'd say I had a slightly different role, as in I was direct managing the people rather than dealing with the heads and stuff like that, and the media and stuff like that, sort of just in control of the team and focusing on it.
Obviously, you then managed to get some work in the Ginetta Juniors series or Ginetta series with E3 Sports. So when we talk to drivers, clearly there's a kind of pyramid that they're trying to climb up. So they might do Ginetta. In the UK, they might then go to single-seater like GB4, and so on and so forth, or into sports cars. Is that similar for engineers? Are you looking to start somewhere at the bottom? Is it voluntary, or like, how does that work?
So yeah, it's definitely a stepping stone as well. I mean, the Ginetta Juniors as well. There's still stuff you can plug into the AIM system and stuff like that. You're definitely reading stuff off of there, and it's you can use the V box and stuff to coach your driver a bit. Aims for more engine management and stuff like that. You can see brake pressures and stuff like that. See if you've got anything that's going on. And yeah, you sort of take the knowledge that you learnt there, and then you can apply it. If you moved up to say like a GT4, a single seater, it's the same systems. It'd be AIM, Motec. V box is still quite used at the top as well. So it's definitely a stepping ladder, I'd say.
Okay, so you're going to have to break that down for me because I'm a mere amateur. If we had my co-host AMG Dens on the show, he'd be V-Box and so on. So what's AIM and what's a V-Box? Tell the lay listener like me.
So an AIM is more or less your engine management system. So you get all the plugins from the ECU. You'll get, your revs, your water temperatures and stuff like that. It's more what's the car doing and is it doing it correctly? Is it burning the fuel right? You can see all sorts. And then a V box is more cameras. So it's more to see driver inputs, how the car handles and stuff like that. And it still got some plugins from the ECU, so it'll have his throttle, his brake traces and stuff like that. And then it's got some lateral and longitudinal Gs as well that you can use.
That's really interesting that you have that in the Ginetta because for some reason, and maybe it's just because I've gone to like Rye House and done a bit of go-karting, I kind of assumed that, yes, okay, Ginetta's competitive, but I kind of just imagined it was some mechanics, yes, some drivers, yes, but the actual engineering side and trying to like refine the setup and give the feedback to the driver. How critical would you say that is in terms of being competitive in that series?
I'd say definitely it's a massive thing. If your driver's not comfortable in a car, they're going to struggle. They're not going to be able to race with it. So that was massive. And as well in the Ginettas this year, we had a new tyre compound. We moved to Pirelli, and so we had to readjust the setup completely. In our winter testing to find the sweet spot for the driver, and it's difficult working with a junior driver as well because their feedback at times is just like, yeah, the car's fine, but when you analyse it further, it's not actually driving as it should do, as it has done previously. You sort of pick up little things, and as well, he can say, "Oh yeah, it felt oversteery," and then goes and look at the data, and it's just like, "Wow, I've actually got a load of understeer. What's going on?" So it's just trying to work with the drivers, even from a young age, because a lot of the Ginetta junior drivers they try and climb their way through the ranks, and developing that from a young age, that driver feedback is really important.
So when I looked at your LinkedIn, because obviously that's the research that we have to do here, I just loved it. It said something like, you can quote me on this, motorsport technician, E3 Sports, responsibilities, and then in there it said pit stops. So like when you're in Ginetta, are you doing a lot of a bit of everything? Like do you help on the pit stops or was that at the beginning?
So we actually run some GT academies and we ran them in Britcar last year. So we had to do pit stops in that where we were doing, the race went from wet to dry. So we had to do a tyre change and damper clicks and anti-roll bars all and stuff. I think we had a 2-minute window and, the pit stops traditionally, it's just a driver change. So driver will get out and then get back in. And then we're thrown in with this weather changing and sort of my first ever pit stop. And yeah, I absolutely loved it. The heart rate was going and I get terribly anxious before it. But, when I'm in the moment, it's just natural to me.
I was thinking of Gunther Steiner because, of course, Haas for a couple of years in a row probably didn't put all 4 tyres on the car. Was there something in you thinking as it went down the pit lane, I hope all 4 tyres are secure?
No, we're quite detailed with it. Like we know what we've done. We've talked all the wheels. It's not there's not a lot to go wrong unless you forget something, and that I say that never really happens. If I've done big jobs on the car, like took the engine out, the gearbox or something, there's sometimes I'm expecting it, maybe it isn't right. there can be little things that you maybe nick when you're putting it in or taking it out. But no, never really in a pit stop. It's sort of, when you're working with the lads, it's sort of spot on. We all can trust each other.
No, fair enough. And it sounds like it's a great team environment as well. So you mentioned taking a gearbox out, putting it in, and it just made me think about how expensive these cars are. So, maybe you don't know, maybe you're not in the kind of looking at the invoices, but at an estimate, how much would you say a Ginetta costs, even just the car or to run it?
I think you can pick second-hand cars up for, a junior for something like 20 grand. But for a season, it's tyres, fuel, the travelling, all the testing you do, you've got to pay all your staff and stuff like that. I think I wouldn't say it would be less than 100 grand quite easily to do Ginetta Juniors.
When you were going to say the price of the car, for some reason my brain was like, I don't know, you were going to say something reasonable, and then you were like 20 grand. And without disclosing too much information, I've just bought a car. We were leasing cars. We just bought one for roughly that price, and I was just thinking, gosh, that's the same as Ginetta. So God, it's not a poor man's game, this motorsport, eh?
Definitely not. Definitely not.
Let's talk a bit about your masters, right? So first of all, tell us a little bit about the difference between like a motorsport engineering course and mechanical engineering. How does it specialize? What are the sort of elements that make it about motorsport?
There is quite a lot of crossover. So a lot of the lectures I do are with automotive guys and motorcycle guys, and some mechanical and stuff like that. I say where it specialises is vehicle dynamics. That's massive. That's is literally how you set a race car up. What are you targeting? How do you go about tuning that setup? And then stuff such as engines. How do they work? What's going on in the combustion chamber? The Otto cycle, diesel cycle, all stuff like that. That's where it's really different, I'd say.
Gosh, it does sound incredibly technical, but also really applied to the reality of going racing and doing motorsport. So you've just submitted your thesis or in the last dissertation in the last few days and weeks. What was it about, or are you unable to disclose that?
I can disclose bits. So I worked with a company, and it was on the vehicle simulations. So the university had one of these cars, and they took it around a track, and we had some data off it. We had a Motec logger on it, and from that, I built a virtual model within VI Grade, applied it to compare the data, and then validated the model, made sure it behaved as we expected it to. The lap time was pretty similar, which was good. And then I took one of their newer cars and applied a GT4 conversion for it. So aerodynamics, brakes, roll cage, that changes your roll stiffness. And from that, simulated a lap against current grid to see if it'd be competitive or not, and whether that's something they want to pursue in the future.
I just, for some reason, thought some guy walked into a boardroom and said, right, we're going to go motor racing. But you're right. Nowadays, you don't need to spend tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of pounds trying it and failing. You can try and simulate it and think carefully about what you'd need to do. Well, that sounds really applied. Have you thought about going into sort of motorsport or the automotive sector in that way, as opposed to just trackside and with teams?
Definitely, this is all stuff that can be, all in-house manufacturers would do. All road cars, they'll simulate before they, even consider it. What do we want to build, and is it possible? What sort of suspension geometries do we want to use, and everything like that. Your goals are different in terms of how you use the tire. You've got ride comfort to consider and stuff like that. You've got slightly heavier car. It's not going to be cornered that hardly you'd like to think. So yeah, there's definitely an automotive route as well I could take.
Absolutely. So that reminds me, thinking about road cars. Do you have a road car at the moment?
Yeah, I've got a little Mazda MX-5.
Of course you do. You couldn't just have, because I've got a Skoda because, I'm now middle-aged and have a family. But of course you have a Mazda MX-5. My observation, right, because, I've seen cars for about 20 years. Back in the 90s, my family had different cars. And when you opened the bonnet, it was much more accessible. You didn't necessarily. Well, you definitely didn't have to go to the manufacturer. Like, oh, I'm going to go to the BMW dealer or whatever. It was much more common that you'd go to an independent mechanic. Would you say, with an MX-5, is that something that you or someone similar to you could work on? Obviously, complying with whatever needs to be road legal.
I think all cars can be worked on, really. I think they are the same. Once you understand them, they are all the same. They might just be a bit more covered up with plastic these days, and stuff like electronics, they can be difficult to deal with on modern cars. But yeah, definitely, your sort of older cars, definitely easier to work on. I'd say there's not a lot less in the way and stuff like that. And it's sort of not more thought through, but it's more sort of designed so that you could work on your own car rather than modern cars where it's you need specialist tools now and all sorts.
And you talked about like not necessarily cornering or not expecting road cars to be cornered particularly quickly. How would you describe your driving style on the roads?
I'd say I'm quite safe, but and I don't particularly corner hard. But if I like to give it, it's only a little Mazda, and I like to rev it out sometimes. I'd say that, yeah.
Definitely something I could identify with. Quickly before we talk about where you might want to go in the future, it's interested to know how much sort of popular motorsport you tend to follow, whether you have a favorite series, whether you have a driver that you've been following that you tend to prefer.
So I follow all the F1 and watch it whenever I can, whenever I'm not at a track. I particularly like GT racing, endurance, and stuff like that. Especially the hypercars recently. I think they've been something really cool in Le Mans and stuff like that. And then even so, with working in motorsport, he's sort of recognised the drivers that have been on the grid before and where they're going and how they're going through and stuff like that. So it's great to see, really. I follow all the drivers that I've worked with before, and it's nice to see where they're going now. Say one in F1, I'm a big Max Verstappen fan. I'll have to say that. Not probably too popular, but yeah, big Max Verstappen fan.
That's all right. You can like who you like. It's interesting. I think you said that you're the guy that drove the car when you were at university. Was it Tom Wood? You said is now
Yes,
in
correct.
GT3. Is that right? Or British GT?
Yeah, so he was in British GT when we were running him as well, but he was racing in the Radical when he could. And then just a few weekends gone, he raced for Beechdean in the Aston Martin GT3 to make his debut and set the lap record around Brands.
That's someone that's incredibly talented. Are there other drivers that you've seen around, worked with in the series that perhaps stand out to you, and you'd put your finger in the air and say, "I predict this guy's going to go somewhere." Any names you want to give us?
I think Freddie Slater, who won Ginetta Juniors last year and has just won F4 Italy, I think he'll, make it to F1. I think one day. I think he's got the budget too, and he's incredibly talented. I think he's going into F3 next year, so it'd be cool to see where he ends up.
Yeah, that name really rings a bell. I want to say that he might have done one or two rounds of what's now called GB3, maybe at the end of the season. I don't know, but yeah, like hearing that voice or that name, it does ring a bell. So, okay, Freddie Slater, we'll be keeping our eye on it. We love a guy called Colin Queen, who's in GB3, he's from the US. He's like consistent top 10 runner in GB3. He was top 5 runner in GB4. It's really fascinating, and doing the show, you kind of start to realize how many drivers there are out there. So for you to pick out Freddie Slater, we're going to hope that he makes it up the pyramid, which is fantastic. So talking of that, neat segue. Where do you want to go? You said right at the beginning, hopefully make it to Formula One. So you're in Ginetta at the moment. What would be the logical step for you? Do you have anything that you're targeting in the next few years?
So I'd quite like to continue working with the company that I did my masters with. I think they've got some good aspirations, and they make some. They're starting to make stuff that you wouldn't usually see or you wouldn't expect with the brand. So I think that's definitely a good opportunity for me. I'd love, from a mechanicking point of view, I'd love to work in, British GT doing the pit stops and stuff like that. I think that'd be really exciting. And, maybe even some European GT stuff. That'd be really cool.
Oh yeah, it would be. I love all the tracks in the UK. They're all different, from go-karting tracks like Wilton Mills, one of my favourites, all the way through to, you've got Alton Park, Brands Hatch.
I absolutely love Donington Park. It's probably my closest track. I've always just loved going there. I think the racing's really good there, and even on a sim, I love to get my drivers on the sim and try and beat them around Donington. Try my hardest, but I usually don't win. But yeah, that's a place that is just where I did my first ever test day, and ever since, I fell in love with the place really.
Do you see potentially a return of Donington to a higher level of motorsport, or do you think now with the way that the FIA regulates the different circuits, it's probably at its level?
I don't think it will return to an F1 calendar at all. It just couldn't hold the capacities. And even as a track, there's not too many corners. I mean, I think for when they did the Grand Prix there, they had to actually add, a chicane, another hairpin. Um, so no, I don't think. I think it could host some European GT rounds, but no, I think it's as high as it'll go.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And actually, watching kind of single seaters, GB3, things like that, you start to see that actually following and passing in some of these tracks is quite difficult, even at that level. So then, if you make it an 898 kilogram or whatever it is Formula One car that's 2 meters long or probably even longer now, it probably isn't quite right for these circuits.
I think you see the difficulties they have on some of the tracks where they've got the longest straights and the biggest braking zones, and they still definitely struggle. I think Donington as well for a driver is incredibly difficult because you don't get much rest because there isn't a massive straight there. I think the back straight isn't that long, and then even the front straight, to get alongside, even in some of the GTs and stuff like that, and the single seaters GB3, GB4, it's incredibly difficult, which is probably what makes for good drivers coming out of the UK and stuff.
Yeah, that and the weather, which obviously you've contributed to with the tyre change. But yeah, definitely. It is interesting you say that because I was reflecting the other day. We had a guest, a 13-year-old girl from Poland. She's basically in Italy the whole time doing go-karting. And clearly Italy is like the global, I don't know, for me, epicenter of go-karting. Yet when you look at sort of single-seater racing and even GT racing, you could argue that the UK is up there. What would you say has caused that? Is it just the fact that we've always been doing it? Is it the tracks? Is it things like that?
I think the historic tracks helps, especially with a big name as Silverstone. I think Silverstone gets interest from all over the world. But I think it's the fact that we've always gone, motor racing here, and it's sort of just taken on and grown over the years.
Exactly right. Okay, so we're going to play 2 games. And then we're going to come quite close to the end of the episode. So the first game, because you just said that you race your drivers on the simulator. So if I gave you any car, any circuit, you could do a hot lap or have a race, what would you pick and why?
You put me on the spot here.
No pressure.
I think I'd love to drive a GT3 car. I think that'd be an absolute scream. Just because they're a bit easier to drive, in my opinion. A single seater would probably terrify me. I have to say I'd love to do it around Donington as well. In the dry, I couldn't do it in the wet. Not a chance.
Yeah, good luck with that. I don't know why, but every time I see a race in Donington, it's either currently raining, about to rain, or has just stopped raining. So, maybe you've got a small window in the summer.
A few days, maybe a weekend.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the barbecue season over. In your job, is there ever a chance to sit behind the wheel, or is it just so costly to drive those cars and maintain them?
No, I think I could probably start doing some track day stuff if I really wanted to and go that way. But I could never get to the heights that these drivers are already at, from such a young age. It's quite difficult to compete when they've been in go-karts since they were, 6 years old.
It's unfair. Well, I've got a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old, so maybe there's hope for the 6-year-old. The other guy's past it, so I won't tell him that. He's asleep now. Okay, so second game, and it's about Formula One, and we're going to do a team principal special. So usually we do it with drivers, but it's a polite PG version: taxi, dinner, avoid. So you've got to pick a Formula One team principal, and it could be of today or it could be of any era. Formula One team principal to get you to dinner. And normally it's because they're a great driver, but it could be someone organising that. You got to have a Formula One team principal that you want to have dinner with because you think they're good company, interesting. And then finally, the Formula One team principal you want to avoid because, can't stand them or, might say something you regret. So taxi, dinner, avoid.
I think it's definitely got to be dinner with Gunter Steiner. I know he's not a current principal, but I think the stories he's got, and he's absolutely hilarious when you see him on the television. So I think definitely dinner with him. To get me to dinner, I think Christian Horner used to be an ex-racing driver, so I might go there. And then avoid. Oh, I'm gonna have to say Toto Wolff. He might smash my headphones that I've got on.
What did he say? No, Michael, no. When he smashed the thing. So yeah, that's fair enough. Okay, well, we have two questions that we leave the episode with. So the first one is, thinking about any of our listeners that might want to go down a similar path to what you've gone down, both in terms of working in motorsport and studying motorsport engineering. What advice do you wish that you had when you were embarking on that? And what would you give our listeners?
I think definitely assess your goal. Make sure that it's achievable. Set your sights on it, and do whatever you can to achieve it, and then plan your next steps going on. Once you've got there, what's the next step for you? So you graduate, then where do you go? Where's the next stop? Where's the next stop? It's not as always easy as planning it like that. And I'd say an advice if you wanted to get into teams and stuff like that is get yourself down to the track. If you can, hand your CVs out. Say, anyone needs some help. Even sort of club car racing, they're always massive. Just for someone to lend a hand. Maybe change a tire. Just even cleaning wheels and stuff like that can be a foot in the door. Email all the teams. That's always a good one. The championships will usually have a list of all the teams and the emails. That's usually a good way to get in as well. That's exactly how I got in. So yeah, set it as a target, and I'm sure you can achieve it.
Well, no, that's extremely uplifting and inspiring. Set your goal and then go after it. Do you have anything else you want to leave our listeners with before we ask our final question that we ask everyone?
Just make sure it's your passion. If you don't enjoy motorsports, it won't be the career for you. Because it is late nights, early starts, long days, long weeks, away from home a lot of the time, for myself anyway. So make sure it's something you love, and then you'll just enjoy it. That's all I can say, really.
That is a common theme. We had Christoph Huber, who is the owner, team principal of Porsche Carrera Cup team, Huber Racing in the German series, and he basically said, you'll enjoy working for me if motorsport is your passion, but if it isn't, it's too hard. It's basically too exhausting to do if you don't love it. So it sounds like you love it, and it's been a real pleasure. So the last question, which is a bit random. I presume you enjoy the occasional pizza?
I do indeed.
Okay, so you could probably guess what's coming. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
I can't say I've tried it, but no, a pizza for me is just plain margherita. I think it's so nice you can't mess it up by adding toppings. I think I'm just plain margherita guy.
Wow, that's like raw dogging a pizza, no toppings, just straight cheese and tomato, bang.
That's how it's done.
Okay. That's how it's done. And that's how it was done. I mean, that is probably, the only time we've ever heard that. So, maybe that's an engineering answer. It's the most efficient, quicker to cook, quicker to eat. But Will, it's been a real pleasure. Guys, if you've made it to the end of the episode, please give us a like, share us, and even more importantly, give us a comment. Tell us what you thought about the episode. Tell us what future guests you want on. And also, anything you want to talk about. We'll be there on all your good social media platforms at Strip the Dip. Come and talk to us, particularly on X, because, you could be anonymous and be horrible, and then we can laugh, and it's all fine. Good. So, without further ado, I've been your host, F1 Blag. This has been Georgie's Stripping the Dipping podcast. Until next time, good night.